The cactus and the fake hand. That's the symbol for our show, Love versus Lust today, Bambos. Just you and me. I can sing you some songs. We might start off with that. Just you and me now.
Stop touching my thigh. So good
morning, Vietnam.
Morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Good evening.
Hello.
Andy, love and lust.
Yes.
This is a subject that Bambos Dimitriou. But
he came up with it. And before we get into it,
we're going to discuss this.
We're going to discuss this on
A Wonderful Chaos.
You're So we have this great format, which we've decided to, but we always forget, which is that we're going to introduce what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to play our little jingle, and then we're going to discuss it in depth. And somehow either one of us always forgets to do that.
Actually, it was the first time I forgot.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you. Yeah. The royal we. So Bambos, I often chose Mondays because I have pet subjects I like to talk about. And I'm like, okay, I'll randomly throw in my topic and then we'll discuss it. And then at some point I said, I'm filling up all the Mondays. I said, Bambos, do you want to have topics for yourself as well?
And don't forget that when I said love and lust, I was struggling with it.
Yeah.
And
I know you were.
So now I was like, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
And do you not want to talk about it because you're no longer struggling, or because you're like, I'm over this subject?
I'm over this subject, but we might as well talk about it.
Really? So like, tell me what made it that you said, I want to have this subject, and then why did you say it's no longer necessarily relevant for you?
Well, I was judging lust within myself, right? I was walking on the streets, I was seeing tits and ass, and I just couldn't handle it. And we just came out of isolation. Summer, spring is here. So it was really difficult for me, and I just wanted to approach and conquer every single woman I saw. Yeah. And I was blaming lust. And
you thought it was a bad thing.
And I couldn't shake it off. What's changed for me is, allowing the lust to sit on a cushion of love. If that makes sense.
I would say, if I can say it almost sounds like you have compassion for your own desire to lust.
Yeah,
because you didn't have compassion for that when you started.
So and I'm also feeling my lust. I can also feel my intent.
Yeah,
and I can feel my heart in there. So if it was just the animalistic lust, which is reactive, that's the thing I was judging. Actually,
instead of just saying, God, isn't it great to feel lust?
God, isn't it great to just feel lust? Okay, change of subject.
You're done. Volalang, who we always want to put his on because he's always there with us, so supportive. He asked us about the backdrop picture. Now, today's backdrop picture, for me, I kind of had this funny, for those that are listening and not watching, it's basically a hand around a cactus. And why I chose it, there was reasoning. It wasn't just because
I'm sure.
I thought to myself, to some degree, we grab after lust and then we get a thorn in our hands. So, and somehow symbolically for me, I thought, when we don't distinguish or see the complementary nature of love and lust, then all of a sudden we're going after it and then we get the thorn. So that was the reason, Bolalang, in answer to your question, why did I choose? I kind of put in 4 images, and Bambos chooses the one he likes best out of the 4. So this is the one he chose.
Yeah.
And we also have Rocky Turner on, who joins us a lot. Yeah. And she's welcoming us a good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I have a lot of feelings and thoughts on love and lust. And the reason why I have a lot of thoughts and feelings is because I noticed in myself that those two got very connected in a way, especially when I was younger, where I didn't distinguish between the two as if one needed to be the other and vice versa. Like you lust after the thing you love. And what I didn't understand is that lust was something very different than love. You can love without lust, right?
Yeah.
And you can lust without love. Did I just say that twice, or did I mix it there?
No, you did good.
Short-term memory. So, and for me, there was something like there's always been this idea as I've gotten older and I've been more in love with being, that I've felt less attached to the lustful side of call it that energy, and more just in love. So when Ronnie, might ask me, hey, are you interested in other women? I'll always say, of course, all the time. Like, are you kidding me? Like that lust is never denied. And then the question is do I love? And I'd say I fall in love with everyone that I interact with when it goes to that state of the impersonal, transpersonal, however you want to phrase it, that moment when you share a bond, which is beyond words.
Nice.
And there's no sexuality in that love. It's just love. It's just pure love.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, and I see, but when I hear you say that, can you, how far do you identify it in yourself when I say it? Do you say, oh, it's a concept, or can you sense that in you?
It's a concept because I sort of had to think about it.
Okay. You don't just feel it. You can't feel it in your body or something.
Right now, this moment, I'm having a lot of struggles with myself.
Really?
Yeah.
What is that?
And because of the struggle, I notice a bit of a disconnect. Because we're doing the show and I'm feeling, so I'm having a hard time being like fully owning the thing that you just shared because I'm not connected to my body.
Wow. Is there a memory of it in your system, or is it just because I feel disconnected?
No, it's definitely a memory of it.
Oh, okay. What's going on at this moment that makes you like feel disconnected?
Yeah, if I allow the words to just come out, I was trying to think.
So speak without necessarily thinking.
Just the lack of love and touch in my life in a more tangible space. Like I see friends and we're still doing the elbow thing.
And that's really important. Like without touch, you really feel. What would you say? How would you describe the without touch?
It's like I don't know if Corona is killing me or if the lack of touch is killing me.
That's. I mean, for those watching or listening, Bambos basically even had a certain like a month where he'd basically get hugs from people.
3 months.
3 months. How many times would you do that a day?
I aimed for 12 people a day.
12 people a day. So you went from really almost creating a life of touch to basically having no touch, but not basically to having no touch.
Yeah, but it lasted 3 months, and then I thought, I don't need this anymore. Like I saw I could. It's always accessible to me. If I need a hug, I can just go up to a stranger and say, "Hey."
But apparently, at this moment, no. And that's been a struggle.
Yeah.
Wow. And how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure others have the same struggle.
I started talking about it today. I met the Kaiser brothers and I cried my eyes out.
Wow.
We did a sharing. I just cried my eyes out in the park, just releasing that. Yeah. And just now there were 2 girls downstairs and we just had a quick connection sharing. And I just told them, you don't know how much this means to me. Like just this simple human, like going back to humanity. And so I'm just endeavoring to talk to 5 people a day or else I'm going to go insane.
Wow. So instead of the touch, at least you're having intimacy.
Yeah.
Wow. Oof. Yeah,
and it's not easy to talk to 5 people. It's like I came from this complete isolation, and now I have to reinvent what it means to me to connect to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
A, I'm a man. B is like, oh, what does this guy want from me?
Yeah, but remember, I mean, when we started, you had no issue walking up to anyone on the street and chit-chatting that. And now, from what I've gathered from your journey, you also see that's not who you want to be in the world. So there's you've got kind of a strange paradox going on. What you long for is a bit of what you've judged in the past Bambos, the past iteration of Bambos, let's say.
Yeah, like right now, I see it more as a necessity.
Yeah, okay.
And I think I'm bringing it up right now on the show because I just saw. I also have been watching the last few shows we've done, and then I trace it back to the last month.
Yeah,
I just see myself being not present in the show. Like I'm there, and I know exactly what I was feeling. And I haven't been talking about it.
Yeah.
So I guess just acknowledging that that's there right now.
Yeah.
Love and lust.
Love and lust. When you have a lustful relationship, I'm assuming that you can also not feel love. Was that fair to say?
I haven't had an only lustful relationship since my ex, since Jennifer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
trying to poke around without asking too many pointed questions. Yeah.
Well, I can even say that my body doesn't allow me anymore to sleep with a woman if at least some level of deep connection and love is there.
Yeah.
Even if I don't want anything from them, like I just want to have sex.
Yeah. 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 You it's not that you're just there has to be something more. I got it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't necessarily see us going down this route for the show.
Me neither.
And it's okay. I'm trying to, I forget where I thought in my mind we might go now, and I'm trying to work my way back to think and not that would even be important, but there was.
Well, you were talking about love and lust, and then you said when you meet people and there's a certain intimacy and conditions that there's just love there.
Yeah, I remember, I did the tour. Everyone, listener, new or old, we bring up the tour a lot, but there was a tour where I traveled the U.S. And when I did the 3 months, I was in San Francisco, and I remember sitting there, and I did my last letter speech, and then some young, probably college student, raised their hand and says, "Andy, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" And it was done kind of with this feeling. It was an assumption I made of, what's your big business plan behind this? Like, what's your strategy? What's your pipeline? What are you going to do? Like, how are you going to get someone from this event to buy the next, that you could kind of feel. And then I looked at her in the eyes. I was like really quiet, and I said, "Because I love you." And I could almost feel tears come up, because I didn't know I was going to say that. I just said, "Because I love you." You can even feel it now. And what I noticed was that she couldn't receive that love, because there always had to be an ulterior motive in her head, because there can't just be love. There's always love with an attachment to something else. And doing the tour, my whole journey was, love is enough. And I saw that everything that forced or pushed love away was exactly the thing that become the attachment to a future outcome, or whatever I thought I might get out of someone in order for it to, get to the next thing. And that would have made the whole trip worthless to me, because then it would have become a business endeavor and not an endeavor to explore and learn and discover whatever I was meant to discover through being present with love. And there was some beauty to that, because in just love, I could be present to others in ways that I would have not necessarily been present before, because I wasn't necessarily ever listening to them to heal or to improve or to make anything better. It was really just like, wow, I'm just going to be here to listen. It almost felt like a priest going through and listening to everyone do their last rites. Right? Because you get a lot of last rites, you know?
I'm just feeling into that. Like that is. Oof.
I mean, I cried pretty much daily. So there was a release of that emotion, because it was pretty, you know, if you don't go to the solution because you shut down emotionally and you just let them be present in love to the person, then you actually allow that to sort of come into you through just being compassionate and having empathy. And by doing that, you really do absorb that energy if you don't necessarily allow it to ground in some way. And I remember I saw a friend in Santa Barbara, Daria, and she's like, Andy, you got to do two things. First of all, you got to hold your feet much more to the floor, and you've got to take deeper breaths into your stomach. Like, you have to allow the energy to pass through you more. Like, and she was right. But the thing was that it was, can I allow the love for them and the love for myself to be there, and so that it's just love. And that's what made the trip so beautiful for me, was that I didn't allow myself to not be love, which wasn't always easy. You know, sometimes someone would be talking, a man would start talking over a woman in order to help her solve her problems because he thought he had all the answers, you know. And then on one side of me, I'd want to say, just shut up, finally, shut up, let her live her and on another side, you're like, wow, that guy, he must really be suffering right now, not able to sit with the discomfort that's going on.
So how did you handle that moment?
I would often handle it with love and care. Like, I wouldn't have necessarily reacted to him in the sense of like, oh, let me put him in his place. I would have sat there and said, wow, he must really have a hard time holding the space that's going on right now, because whatever emotions are being triggered by her, he's not able to sit with it himself. So he's being reactive to that. So I would hold love for that.
Oh, I love that you saw that.
Yeah. And that happened all the time, you know, just holding love for that. So yeah, I know for me in love, I saw love. We talked about it on another show, that love has been a really perplexing thing for me, because I would always be attracted to very weak women that I wanted to take care of. So it was like, oh, I see this weakness in her. I can be the strong male and come over and then heal that.
You'll be the hero.
The hero, right? I can be the guy that takes care of her, right?
Daddy.
And then when it would happen, and then in time, what tends to happen is the people, you know, they don't really change. And then I would become resentful to them because they weren't evolving. They weren't moving. But exactly why I fell in love with them was the reason that I became resentful in the same time. You know that in your own life, clearly.
Yeah.
I've been through enough of your time.
I love how you...
I forgot about it. Like, yeah, what am I talking about?
Of course. That's why we hang out together, Andy.
Yeah.
I noticed we're focusing on the word love.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the word, like if you take lust, like take it as an energy, as a, like, how does that serve you in your life?
How does it serve me?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that people are way too confused and overthink lust, because in a way, you know, when the word sex comes up, lust is connected to sex. And we know sex and money are two subjects that we don't talk about in general, especially in sexuality. So when we have lust, I mean, lust is lust. Like, isn't it great if I'm married, I've got 5 kids, to go out on the street and just feel sexual urges the whole time? Like, isn't that like fantastic?
It's the shit.
And now we have society that says, hey, you can't feel that. Nope, you can't feel. So now what happens is either we go to some shame, we push that down, and then it comes out, as we always say, is Bola Lang, our dear guest, always loves it when I say things like this, is that then it comes out in contorted ways. Because if we suppress it, we feel it, and then we can't allow it to be expressed in any way. And then it gets like this, whatever.
That's what happened with me. I suppressed it.
Yeah.
Like, fully.
And what do you mean by you suppressed the lust?
I suppressed the lust. I went celibate for a year. And I was avoiding putting myself in situations which would ignite the lust.
Yeah. And so you try to control it.
I tried to control it.
And not celebrate it.
Did it work? No.
Well, I would also love to say you chose to go celibate for a year, and you got the opportunity. And this is sometimes where I get frustrated with you, because
there should be like a caption: Andy's getting frustrated with Bambos.
Is that sometimes? Did we check our teeth today? Sometimes you don't look at life as an experiment, so it becomes like an unending process until you get sick or something breaks, or instead of saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this thing and see what there is to learn from it." And I always feel like that way of going through life makes the lessons far more accessible.
I'm really happy for you.
You don't get stuck as easily. That's at least what I found.
Hey,
what happens when you say that? Look at your face is contracting. What happens to you when I say that?
I was going to say I'm learning.
Oh, okay.
It's a step-by-step thing, right?
Yeah, because I'm always in awe of the experiments you bring into your life. No, seriously. I mean,
set me on fire. Ooh, I burned.
But yeah, I often see that you don't see it as sort of an experiment. You kind of say, now I'm going to do this, and then at some point you do it for a year, and you get exhausted, and you don't necessarily say, well, what am I taking away as my lesson from this, right? I see what the difference is. Oh, we're going to do a whole show on this one.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was thinking. I was thinking like. There's no celebration, you say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a difference between saying, I don't want a negative experience, or I want a positive experience. And I guess what I'm pointing at is that you'll often go into things, say, Andy, I don't want the negative. And I'd say, yeah, that's part of the picture. But what about I get the positive? And if you don't have that balance, then things get a little bit wonky from my experience.
I noticed you've lost me.
Okay, so I'll give you an example.
Okay. I just slow down.
Okay.
You've lost me because what you're saying is irrelevant, and to a certain extent, right? Like, you're not in my body to fully be in how I experience, and maybe I'm heavy about shit because this is my lifestyle. It's a constant putting myself through things. I just don't see the end of it.
No, there's not an end in it for you.
There is no end to it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this didn't bring me what I wanted it to bring me, so now we're gonna do something else.
But you don't necessarily know what you wanted it to bring you. You just do it without any intent of it bringing you anything.
Well, now you're saying that there's no self-reflection?
No, I'm saying that when you were picking up on women and having that life, you said, I'm going to be celibate for a year. That's what you said.
No, I said I'm going to be celibate after Jennifer.
Yeah, after that, yeah. But that was it. You just left it at that. We didn't go into reflective exercises like, Andy, what is the experiment? What do I hope to learn from this? What am I going to track in myself? What do I want to discover? It was more like, I'm not going to do this. And there was no, and let me see what there is to reflect on as it happens. Not that you're not reflecting on it as it happens, right? But you didn't treat it as an experiment.
So what's the problem with that?
There's no problem with it, but there is a repercussion for it.
Well, let's just say, or at least the thing that I remember.
Slow down. Andy, how would my life be different if I did it that way? That's an open. Now you're shut down. You're defending. How would my life be different? Because I might be talking total nonsense, but you're already defending whatever the idea is in your head. So now whatever I say has to be convincing you of something, and I could care less if you get this. Like, who cares?
So, Andy,
what is your perceived, because it's always my perceived.
Yeah. What is the perceived result from me living it in that way?
In that way. The only potential shift there might be is that you might see that your life becomes an experiment where you learn so much more because you're not just doing things and waiting for changes to happen, but you're consciously making a decision where you're observing the result or the outcome in a way that you're continually learning and growing. Where when you, an example would be, you went a year celibate and all of a sudden you come and say, Andy, I'm shutting down. I don't know what's going on. This is the worst thing. I'm in the worst, state. And now I feel lust. I'm judging lust. Like, imagine if you went into the same experiment, but you went in saying, Andy, I want to see how it feels to not have it, and kind of track myself and see what there's a different, and learn and almost document that journey.
There wasn't space for that.
In you?
Yeah.
Okay. And why not?
Because the reason I went celibate is because I just saw myself, I ended a relationship, now I'm going to be going on the hunt. And I said no to the hunt.
Yeah. And what did you say yes to?
I said yes to, like, connecting to myself in that time.
Okay. And then at some point, that no longer worked.
And yeah, that was a painful thing to discover, that I had been suppressing it very unconsciously.
Yeah. Okay. I could go much deeper into this one, but it turns into like a general coaching session and not a show. And not good nor bad, by the way, but I do feel like
would the coaching session be like, what people get out of it, or is it just for me?
I think it's just for you.
Okay, then we don't do it.
Because there's a lot of some of the coaching sessions I see, it's more like me supporting you to see something, and then another one, it's helping you see through the defenses in your system and how that might also be part of the struggle, self-identity. And self-identity is really hard to do on a show. I find my mentor Case did self-identity all the time, and it's because we don't know how we identify and how we say, this is how I am, and this is what I do, and this is how I work. And that confines and defines what we do. But if we'd never call into question the actor making the decisions, then basically we're justifying our decisions afterwards. And then if we're justifying, and I say justify, explaining them, not justifying, explain, however, whatever words you want to use for it. So then if I engage you on that level, basically now I'm only trying to help you manage or control a paradigm, let's say, which you've already decided that you want to live in, which is, I am struggling with this, or I've decided that.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, who is that I? Who cares what the I wants? What is the thing driving the I? Because it's the I that always gets me stuck, confused, frustrated.
The I that tells a story.
Yeah. And so if I'm engaging the story, imagine I'll go crazy because now I'm engaging the story, not the blind thing going on that says that this story is important. What makes that story important? Like, what made the story important that you went a year celibate?
Oh, to break a pattern.
Okay, and so let's go one step deeper, like to where the emotions are, not where the logical construct is. Like, what makes in the identity of Bambos who he is, that pattern had to be broken?
Sex addiction.
Okay, so you said, I, as Bambos, am
a sex addiction,
a sex addict.
Yeah,
and that was something that you like came to grips with.
The word came to grips with doesn't.
No, probably not. No, but that was
a way I at least took control.
You took control over.
Yeah.
You said, I am a sex addict.
Yeah.
Yeah, more or less, just to, okay.
No, that's exactly what I said.
Yeah. I don't ever remember. I think I remember hearing you say that, but And where did that sex addiction come from in you?
It's like a raw. It's like a raw beast.
What do you connect the beast to?
Ask it differently.
Where did the beast show up in your life?
When he wasn't loved. Eight years old.
8 years old.
Yeah. Or at least his perception. Yeah.
And what did he do at 8 years old?
Survival.
But what did he do? Like
he shut down.
He shut down.
He didn't. He couldn't make sense of the world. No, but he also didn't have the tools or the common sense to ask.
No, but we don't go into too much story of the 7 because we're still being the 7 at the moment. When you say you associate the sex addiction back to the not having control at that age, how do you see it? Because I have a hard time understanding how those connect.
So I need to go back to when I was having sex with a lot of women, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was hungry for love at the age of 8. It was 8. I was so hungry for love and not feeling safe that I couldn't find it. And having all these women and having 3 or 4 women a week, I could never get hurt again. I could never get hurt because if a woman would decide she didn't want to be with me, I had 3 other women lined up. So it was like a coping mechanism. Where are you?
I'm feeling it in my body, feeling your experience. And it's touching me. I'm feeling into my time when I was in my 30s, feeling very alone in the world and using sex as a replacement for love.
Yeah.
And as you speak, I just was kind of feeling into that. You when you say when you were talking about having several partners and being able to feel like that you can have sex and then not feel that you'll ever be rejected because there's already somebody else that'll be there. What would you say you're getting from the sex that you weren't getting as an 8-year-old?
Validation.
Validation.
Yeah.
Validation that
Wow, this is really I didn't expect that we go this way.
No,
validation, like women would say, wow, you really touch me in places. So I will be the teacher in
and that gave you a sense of strength.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So when I talk about identity, I'm always talking about how deep does that rabbit hole go? Because once I react to those thoughts without always being in touch with them, like as a movement inside of myself, then somehow I'm always just a reaction to a negative. I don't want that, so I try to do something else. And that's why when I do something, I do it as consciously as I can, so that it's not a exploration by taking another decision where I don't necessarily have a idea of what I want to get out of it. We can discuss it off the air. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I mean, we can discuss like what those things might look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're thoughtful experiments. And I see that living with thoughtful experiments really is a fundamentally different way of living. We can discuss it, but you do a lot. That's for damn sure. So I'd love to transition to something, if we may. Unless if you're not grounded in this, we might take a quick air breath time.
I'm really taking it.
Yeah. I'd like to show a video. And this video you haven't seen yet, but it's one of these videos that when I saw it, it really had an incredible impact on me. And I'd love to show it and share it and discuss it afterwards, because I thought it was really an important video. And I'm sure many people have seen it. It's been viewed and shared so many times, but I'd like to use it as a moment to talk about. Oh, I always do that.
You have to minimize it.
You have to touch it for me. I don't know where the minimize it is. Oh, great. Great. Okay.
Love is a word that in our culture has almost lost its meaning. There's a very interesting story about the Rebbe of Kotsk, who came across a young man who was clearly enjoying a dish of fish that he was eating. And he said, young man, why are you eating that fish? And the young man says, because I love fish. He says, oh, you love the fish. That's why you took it out of the water and killed it and boiled it. He said, don't tell me you love the fish. You love yourself. And because the fish tastes good to you, therefore, you took it out of the water and killed it and boiled it. So much of what is love, right, is fish love, right? And so, young couple falls in love. Young man and young woman fall in love. What does that mean? That means that he saw in this woman someone who he felt could provide him with all of his physical and emotional needs. And she saw in this man somebody she feels that she can write. That was love, right? But each one is looking out for their own needs. Right? It's not love for the other. The other person becomes a vehicle for my gratification. Too much of what is called love is fish love. Right? An external love is not on what I'm going to get, but what I'm going to give. We had an ethicist, Rabbi Dessler, who said the people make a serious mistake in thinking that you give to those whom you love. And the real answer is you love those to whom you give. Right? And his point is, if I give something to you, I've invested myself in you. Right? And since self-love is a given, everybody loves themselves. Now that part of me has become in you, right? There's part of me in you that I love. Right? So true love is a love of giving, not a love of receiving.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before.
No.
Nice.
And I've seen it a few times. I love it each time I see it. Is the fish love. And we give love so that we can receive it. I remember I told you once that my dad, as everyone knows, it's like he's been thrown under the bus enough times now. He wasn't an emotionally available man, bipolar and everything. And when my brother said to him, I love you, my dad said, fuck you, stop manipulating me. Okay. And in a way, I never understood that. How could my dad have said that? It just made no sense to me. And then I didn't realize that in some ways, my dad obviously didn't get my brother, but I didn't see that a lot of times when we say, I love you, it's because we're needing and expecting it back. Mm. So my dad clearly felt manipulated, right? Because my brother said it and he thought potentially that my brother was saying it so that he could elicit a reaction from him. And he was triggered by that. And then he, violently, gave him a whatever talking to. Mm. And it was only much later I realized that, when you love, it's one of my favorite songs when I was in high school was Sting, "If you love someone, set them free." And there was always something that I found so beautiful. It's like a selfless love. I love you, not because of what you give me. I just love you. And that's what I feel, for instance, with Ronnie. And, you'll see things that will come up where, like we talked sometime about her moving to London for a job that I knew wasn't going to work out, totally disrupted everything in my life. And yet I said, I love you and this is what you want. And so this is what we do. And that was what I associate with the selfless love. I love you and therefore we do whatever feels that needs to be done for you.
And you already knew that it will go to shit, and you let her learn her lessons.
I mean, one say, why did you know? Oh, sorry. Thank you. One would say, why do you know? And because you know her nature, the nature of finance, the nature of finance in London, right? Emotionally shut down, money oriented, all the things and you're like, okay, that's not going to work out. And yet, if I was to say that to her and then tell her all the things that were going to go wrong, then all of a sudden she might not do it. And then she's just going to resent me for not having the opportunity to have that experience for herself. So the love.
So you actually didn't share with her all these things?
I did, but softly. Softly. I mean, I was like, babe, it is, do realize this. I would speak more in those terms. Like, do realize it is that culture. It is this, it is that. And if you agree and you understand what you're doing, then, hey, it's not all that dissimilar. What I mentioned earlier to you is it's a conscious experiment. So I don't think it's one's decision to decide what's best for another, but I do believe it's our decision to help them see the consequences and the implications and the conditions they might also want to consider. But at the end, it's always their decision.
So there's no manipulation and
no, there's always influence. We interact with someone, we influence them just by the mere nature of being there. So in that way, yeah, that was very much they're very much on my mind. So yeah, that's the kind of love that if I don't feel that to a person or to, anyone for that matter, then I see there's a reflection or a shadow that I'm not looking at in myself. I can't raise compassion for an individual. It's like I read one of the chapters in the book about my grandma, and I hated my grandma from my mom's side. I just hated her. Aunt Betty. She'd come in, she'd complain, she'd say everything that was wrong. She never hugged. She was the worst. And she had to come in like every year for like a month. So it was like a prison sentence of being in the house with grandma for a year. And it was so weird. I get into my 40s and I still didn't like grandma. And then I talked to my uncle, and my uncle, and it was really kind of a weird moment because it was his mom. And I kind of said, I got to be honest with you. I really didn't like your mom, we were always a little bit protective to our parents, and I didn't know how he'd react. And then he totally said, well, do realize the man of her dreams, the love of her life, went onto an operating table to get a biopsy, a checkup, and then the doctor screwed up. And 2 weeks later, he died, and she lost the man of her dreams. And from that moment, the rest of her life was just living in the pain and misery of that loss. And as I talk about it now, I can cry because it's hard to, because at that moment, all of the compassion I was unable to feel, the love I couldn't feel for her, I basically, I just realized, wow, I wasn't able to see it. So yeah. And then lust, like if we try to go to the other side of lust for me is so separate from those feelings, and yet it's also gets connected to those feelings, which gets it confused. Like lust, sexual desire, it may or may not be attached to the person we love. Ronnie said, do me a favor when I'm on the show, talk about Freddie Mercury's relationship with his wife. Because the love of his life was this woman, and although he was gay and basically had an entire kind of group of others that he had sex with, the love of his life was this woman.
Yeah.
And then it was sort of like, so from society, one might sit on the outside and say, hey, that's not acceptable, judging from the values that we've decided to take upon ourselves to look through the prism and then but if you look at it, how could anything be more beautiful? Like they transcended sexuality and they found love, and then they saw sex was also part of life and they celebrated it. It's no different than our guests when we had open relationships, right? Didn't quite work out for them, but on paper, it can work if each party is loving the other person more than they need to possess them sexually. Yeah. So, yeah. Wow. We went in 5 different spaces, so
yeah, we did.
I want to check in and see where you are now.
I'm sitting with the word, or with the sensation of lust, as also or at least the discovery I'm having right now as a creative energy.
Yeah.
Like the thing that I was wanting to push away is actually the thing that you can use it for creativity, for passion, for drive, for getting shit done.
Yeah. What changed? Where did that happen? Because that just happened in the last moment. So what did you discover? What came up for you that happened that you say that?
When was this? 3 weeks ago?
Uh-huh.
Well, I said I'm not going to suppress, but I'm also not going to react to it. So what happens when I surrender to the sensation of lust? And how that played out, I was actually on my way here, and I just saw this beautiful woman in a red dress. And I just saw her. I was like, and I just breathed it in, and I didn't look away, but I wasn't staring. I was just like deeply appreciating her essence as a divine feminine, if you want to use those words.
Yeah.
And I started crying. Because there was a kind of tragedy in me, like the tragedy of I'm witnessing this woman and she'll never know how deeply she touched me in that moment. Like someone on that square was fully being present with her. And I didn't have to go and say, hey, listen.
Yeah.
So it just stayed as a very surrendered feeling in my body.
And now we started the conversation and we talked about feeling love.
Yeah.
That's what I would associate the feeling with. Love was not attached to her anymore. She created the experience, but you didn't need her to be able to experience it inside of yourself. And that's beautiful.
Nice. I couldn't articulate it like that. I was just...
Yeah.
The words, like, it's the first time I associate surrender with it. But yeah, I surrendered.
Yeah. And that's what I always associate with that big love, universal love, where it's no longer attached to the individual. It's taken away and it's held in the space. And there's almost always tears there. Because there's like a beauty that you can't put into words. And then I've often found in myself, it comes out in tears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And getting back to, that's why I like to do conscious experiments. I tell you, seriously,
I'm just
because you wonder why I can make statements. It's because I'm experimenting to see what I learned from it so that I can try to summarize it into a deeper understanding. So that's the reason why I'm saying that over and over again. Why can I articulate things? Because I try things as an experiment to see what I discover. And it'll always evolve. There'll always be bigger nuances. There'll be a bigger context or a limited, smaller context. But in general, it's done with some thought. Right. I only learned last week why I do that way. And it goes back to a talk we're going to have soon about a philosopher, Karl Popper. And we'll have a show on Karl Popper. What I learned from Karl Popper and how he was so thoughtful about how he did things, and that through that, he freed himself of being a subject to just mass confusion. He accepted that he was confused, and he found a way to navigate the confusion without needing to close off into absolute truth. And that's the navigation we all make. How do we make peace? Don't get too stuck in ideas or constructs of good and bad, right and wrong, and yet still endeavor to be in the world and interact. And yeah, that's very helpful for me in that way. So I want to discipline your brain a bit more if I have my choice.
Like, please.
Yeah, I'll give you the Karl Popper book to read. It's the worst thing you'll ever have to read the rest of your life. It's like this. It's like a book this thick with a lot of. You'll get my notes. I underlined a lot of the things that I read. What do you? Where do you see yourself going now?
Oh, Yeah, I guess I'm sitting here and
It's a lot going on inside of you, I guess.
Just get hit by an avalanche of thoughts, and it's like no mercy. So just taking a deep breath in and just stepping out of that.
Yeah. What I find curious in relationships, especially is when they move into their 50s, right? I've been with Ronnie for, I don't know, 12, 13 years. And in sometimes when you're in a relationship for a long period of time, you love and you start to see that the possession of sex is no longer the kind of crux of the relationship. You almost say...
What do you mean by possession of sex?
Like, for instance, when I first started going out with Ronnie, it was like, Ronnie, if you were to go out with another man, that would be the end of our relationship. That would be it. Like, that would really be firm on me. It would be like a real possessive, like our relationship. And now as I get older, I'm like, wow, I mean, if that was what Ronnie needed to be happy, I don't know if I would sit there and say, oh my God, that's not going to happen. So in some strange way, I've attached less to the idea that she needs to be mine.
And you're saying that comes with age?
I don't know if it comes with age, with wisdom. I mean, I think we've been together a long time. Like, I don't want to profess anything specifically, but what I do see is, at least in my case, which I always want to speak from my experience, is, or I think maybe if I went out with anyone now at my age, I wouldn't get hung up with the idea that sex was about love. Like, I love independently of sex. And Ronnie once, I laugh because sometimes when I talk to people on the phone, I call them sweetheart usually, or I love them. People I work with, like the males, like even to the point where the people that the partners of those people say, why does he call you sweetheart all the time? And I wouldn't think of any other way, because that's the love I feel. I don't speak of it because that's how I honestly feel. So why wouldn't I communicate that way? And in some ways that love is attached on such a deep level and connection that for her, it took her a little bit of time to feel like it's okay for you to give that love to other people. Because in a weird way, she also wanted to be the only one, sort of thing. In the meantime, it's not like that. But for some time, it was really like, no, I want all that love. And not like, no, there is just love. Now I believe in my life, how I've seen it work is I tend to be a certain way. I'm consistent in that way. And then people at some point understand it because they're around it enough that they start to feel like, oh, wow, that's what it feels like. First, it might feel confusing, but after a while, it makes all the sense in the world. Yeah. So yeah, that's something I've seen. And I've noticed in a lot of my friends that I've gone to high school with or that I've spoken to, that as we get into our 50s, all of a sudden this idea that we are with one partner sexually the rest of our life is now open to discussion. I've also seen the same true for like women who will have relationships with females who weren't necessarily never identified as being lesbian, nor would they even afterwards identify as lesbian per se, but they just say they'd be open to female relationships because there's no more attachment or shame or like, oh, I have to be or not be something for society to accept me. So yeah, I've noticed a lot of that as well. You?
What about me?
No, I mean, have you noticed similarly? Have you seen that in your own environment, or is it?
I see a lot of people in my network wanting to be polyamorous.
Polyamorous.
But it doesn't always feel embodied. So I kind of move away from it.
Yeah. And so what you would say is the difference is they want a lot of sex. And they don't want to attach to any single person. Is that how you would say?
It feels a bit like the hype of the once upon a time in Amsterdam, the hype of raw food, veganism, vegetarian, open relationships, swingers. Like there's only one swinger club in Amsterdam, right? But back in the days, it was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got Barbara Cooper, who's making a lot of comments. It seems like her and Lena Dale McNay. I'm not sure if you know these two.
No.
They seems like love becomes more fluid. And I would say so. There's love, possession love, and then there's just love. And then there's sexual urge. And those things don't, I believe, from my experience, they don't need to be attached. And yet they can be. And they're beautiful when they are as well.
It's nice to have lust when there's love.
Yeah. Sucks if it doesn't. Doesn't
Yeah.
Yeah. And this Lena was you didn't necessarily see, but Lena said, I'm loving this. And that was basically when you started to go into your sharing your childhood experiences and how that was manifesting in your life today. So thank you too for sharing your appreciation of what's going on. Sometimes when we do this, we don't even know if anyone else would benefit from it, but we just would do it anyways.
I noticed that when my ego is getting hacked on, we always have consistent high views.
I've had people ask me offline, say, could you do me a favor and do more of the coaching sessions with Bambos when you're online with them? And I keep saying this isn't the intent of the show. But I often, just to make sure when we're on the show, sometimes you'll identify with things and I just let it be because we're on the show and we're going through, and I'm not going to ask you to look behind the thought and see what's going on there. But by me not doing that, I'm also not really serving you because I'm letting you stay identified in the idea.
Yeah, but I don't think you're also serving the people watching the show.
Could be,
right?
Yeah. I mean, or if we did that every time, it would probably get a little bit, what is this? It's a pseudo coaching program that no one is. So in some ways, I'm always wanting to the quiet voice, the calm, quiet voice behind the noise is the voice I get to when I say, why am I feeling this? How is it? What is it teaching me? What am I seeing in myself? It's like, that's the voice that I stay with until the quiet comes again. And that's at least how I've seen myself navigate. Nice. Can you believe we did an hour? I still don't even feel like we've discussed this topic fully, but
no, we haven't.
It was a great hour regardless. We're coming to our end. We are at our end.
We are at our end.
And now the end is near. What are you doing?
I was going to say goodbye.
You're going to say goodbye? You always want to run off. Whenever it's one of these, no, we're going to prolong it for 5 more minutes. So summary. What's the summary for you, Bambos? What'd you take away from this show?
That I am more confused than I allowed myself to. that I'm a very confused person.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I'm clearly very confused. And as I always tell you, the only difference between me and you is I'm more at peace with my confusion.
Bulalang wants to know what the book title is.
Bulalang wants to know what book recommendation did I recommend a book to you?
Yeah, you said you were going to give me a
book. It's Bulalang. I don't want you reading that book. It's way too heady. It's way too heady for you. You don't need that book. But it is Karl Popper's Arguments and Refutations. That's the book, Bulalang.
Don't think I want to read this book.
And Lena Dale McNay says that she's appreciating us both. So thank you, Dale. Or thank you, Lena. Thank you all for being with us. Tomorrow, we have Simon Squibb on. Simon Squibb is British. He's an entrepreneur. He's a real entrepreneur. He's invested in some 30 some odd companies at least, maybe more, a lot more, I think. And he has this thing called the Good Luck Club, which basically he says that entrepreneurialism is luck, and it can be learned. So I'm curious to see what he has to say there. Yeah. Thank you. Send you all a hug. We look forward to seeing you then tomorrow on
a wonderful chaos.